I've always loved horror films about paranoia and of prairie madness, and The Damned, which releases in theaters in America today, is starting out the year 2025 with a mostly strong, snowy piece that feels at home here in the dead of winter, in the time of traditional Christmas ghost stories. As a work, it can be quickly described as somewhat being the bastard child of The Thing and The Lighthouse. Although, if you go into this with that kind of mindset expecting this to match those works, then you may be disappointed. But if viewed on its own merits and through the lens of its inspiration of late 1800s ghost stories, then I think that it has a lot going on here in its favor. It is the definition of economic in more ways than one. The budget was clearly low. Even to the point that I think there's one shot where you can very briefly see one of the production lights. But they write the story to try and attempt to utilize that by having the film take place in a singular isolated location, to accommodate for that lack of resources. And I think that it should be commended in the first place to even attempt a feature-length period piece that is filled with excellent textural details on a small budget in the first place. The film tells of a fishing expedition funded by a woman named Eva and led by Rory McCann. Times are tough, food is sparse, and their situation looks dire before the film even begins, making the title very apt indeed. Actually knowing who these people are, though, and why they are here is a little confusing. The film was made by Icelandic filmmaker Hardur Hamur, and the film was produced in Iceland. But all the actors are either Irish or from the UK, and it is unclear why these people are so far away from their homes, or at least it was to me. The whole film I was left unsure why they couldn't just fish somewhere that was warmer, closer to where they're from. But one morning they are leaving to start their day and witness a foreign sea vessel taking on water on the horizon, and decide amongst themselves that it is too dangerous to attempt a rescue mission, because there's so few of them and they do not know what they will encounter once they get there. But in the dark of night, curiosity gets the better of them, and as a group they decide that the sunken ship may have supplies that can help them get through this harsh winter, and that it would be in their best interest to raid the boat after the men aboard it drowned earlier that morning. Only to find once they get there that the men in fact did survive by swimming to a large rock jutting out of the water, and are slowly in the process of freezing to death. Our protagonists steal some of the supplies, kill some of the foreign men in the process, and make it back to their side of the shore, losing several of their own men. And then what follows is an hour of slow descent into madness as pitfalls and tragedies befall them in the days to come, and superstition takes hold of their senses and they read ill omens into the things that they see. A dead sailor washes onto the beach with his insides filled with live eels. Bodies start to disappear from their coffins. Supplies, too, from their safeholds. And a sickness is spreading among the men that may be supernatural, or may be the result of the amount of dead that they are keeping close to their home, because the ground is too frozen to bury anyone until spring, and many among them begin to feel as if they are being hunted by a draugr. An undead, reanimated corpse that feels nothing but hate, and desires nothing but the pain and suffering of others. And whether this is real or not lingers over the film, as the monster is a clear allegorical stand-in for grief, and the guilt of doing what they felt they had to do to survive, which in the process sentenced the men on that ship to die out in the cold. Visions of the draugr haunt them all, in their beds at night when they're left alone with only their thoughts, and over their shoulders as they pray to God for forgiveness, and ask Him to help them survive this long winter. On a technical side, outside of certain aspects of the script, I think that everything in this is very good but ultimately feels disjointed in how it does not 100% come together to form an entirely cohesive product. The cast are all giving excellent performances for the most part. They shoot the hell out of these snowy landscapes. The score feels very 90s in its bombastic, orchestral style, which I appreciated as a throwback but also felt that it was doing more of the heavy lifting than it should have. We at times in the audience know that scenes are supposed to be tense because the music tells us that, and not primarily because of what is actually being conveyed in the filmmaking itself. And it isn't bad at all, but very much sits solidly in the B-movie territory that makes for a good time at the movies, if you don't have much going on, and are wanting some more slow burn period horror after Nosferatu. But it certainly isn't something that you need to see either, because you won't be missing out on a conversation here. But still, it's a good time to be had. Now, if you're going to watch the film, please stop watching this now, because I'm going to talk about some third act stuff with the ending here. So, you've been warned starting now. But the film to me ultimately is very hurt by its extremely lackluster ending. In my screening, I actually heard someone laughing as it abruptly cut to the credits, because in the end of the film, Eva confronts the Draugr and shoots it, lighting her home on fire to burn it to make sure that the damn thing is dead for good. But in her mania, we awkwardly see flashbacks that show in reality there was never actually really a Draugr at all, and that the supplies from the storeroom were disappearing simply because some of the men from the ship managed to make it to their side of the island, and were simply just trying to survive just like they were, which doesn't make a lot of sense on a couple of levels. For instance, where were they staying for days on end without freezing? Why were they stealing the bodies from the coffins unless it was to cannibalize them for their meat? Questions like that are left running through your mind as it cuts to the credits, instead of actually being immersed in the elements of what's happening on the screen and experiencing the story. I think that this kind of ending could potentially work, but the way they went about it gave it no ambiguity to let us figure it out for ourselves. The film plainly states what was fabrications of the mind and what was reality, and is less compelling as a result. And I think this, along with the recent Heretic, could have been much more interesting if they had actually leaned into the supernatural elements that they hinted at, but then do not explore. I think an outright Draugr monster movie could be fantastic in this setting, but this isn't exactly what The Dam wants to be, and in my eyes falls short somewhat in how it stumbles in its search for an identity out there in the snowy wastes. But still, it is an enjoyable experience for the most part that I think many could find a good time in. Thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoy this kind of video, let me know, because I plan this year on doing some of this, with same-day reviews on the release day of horror films as they come out. And I'd like to know if folks have an interest in seeing that kind of content. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great weekend.